Now, this week has drawn to a dramatic end politically. This as South Africans woke up to the news of Malusi Gigaba handing himself over to police in relation to contracts, including one for the procurement of locomotives with millions of rands at Transnet. The investigative directorate against corruption, IDAC, has since said Gigaba was not arrested, but rather engaging with his lawyers. And moments later, news came through about Senzo Mchunu handing over electronic devices to the police. Not only has it been an eventful time for some ANC officials, at the same time, the Jacob Zuma-led MK Party also made headlines when it comes to its parliamentary leader, Dr. John Hlophe, who was suspended moments after he fired Colleen Makhubele, the parliamentary chief whip, and replaced her with Des van Rooyen. And Van Rooyen's appointment was reversed in 24 hours. And to help us unpack this rather eventful week, we are now joined by SABC News reporter Samkele Maseko. Samkele, it's really been a dramatic week, but for you, it's also been a very dramatic day. I mean, you've been following what took place this morning with Malusi Gigaba. We saw that statement coming out from him in the morning saying that he had been summoned to appear. Tell us more.
Indeed, it has been a telenovela of a series of South African politics during the course of the week, and dramatically ending today with Malusi Gigaba and Senzo Mchunu handing over his devices. The Gigaba story is very interesting because he is the one who said that he's been summoned to appear in court in charges related to Transnet in the procurement of locomotives. Particularly, we remember that deal was about 32 billion rands with 2 Chinese companies for those locomotives that were procured by Transnet, which ultimately ballooned to about 70 billion rands, which was ultimately cancelled. I've seen a tweet by Montana basically saying that South Africa unfavorably cancelled that particular contract. Until today, Transnet is suffering, particularly when it comes to the movement of goods of South Africa's exports to the international markets. Malusi Gigaba is the one who said he was being arrested. Then hours later, about 2 hours or so, IDAC comes out with a statement that no, we are not arresting Malusi Gigaba. We're in fact engaging with him. When he went to the IDAC offices in Pretoria and Linwood, he went there sharpened with sharp legal minds that are his legal representatives to engage with IDAC on the first floor at the IDAC building. I found it rather confusing at first when I spoke to him in the morning. He said, I'm being summoned to the CSIR offices at IDAC. I said, but aren't you meant to go to a police station if you're being arrested? So that's where the confusion at first started. Then I thought, okay, maybe IDAC, a new investigative directorate, they're doing things differently. It's going to be processed there by the NPA, then ultimately go to the Specialized Commercial Crimes Court to appear there and plead guilty, not guilty, or apply for bail, and ultimately then other political and legal machinations then kick in. So it has been a rather eventful day for everyone, but I'd ultimately say that it was a small mobilization tactic.
Yeah, I also want to touch on that and the fact that really a dramatic day. We're expecting him to appear before court because that's what he said. He needs to present himself before a court of the law. At the same time, later on the day, we saw that statement coming out from IDAC, and they said that it's now no longer about Transnet and, of course, him benefiting. And it also now says that it's in concern with an undeserved benefit. What do we know about what now it seems to be the issue here? Because from what I'm reading from that statement from Malusi Gigaba, he says that it's not a Transnet issue.
It's rather confusing because he said it was a Transnet issue, then later it's not a Transnet issue. But when it comes to Malusi Gigaba and the Public Enterprises Ministry, he was there when this particular tender, when it was signed off, he was not there. But in its implementation phase, he was there. And when the amounts ballooned from 32 billion rands to over 70 billion rands, it was during his tenure as the Minister of Public Enterprises, particularly if you look at the charges that are conferred against Anuj Singh, against Siyabonga Kama, against Jimmy Kama. Those are all charges relating to this particular procurement and this particular tender, which coincided at the time with the PRASA tender of other companies that Montana was there at the time, during the time Brian Molefe, Anuj Singh and Siyabonga Kama were there at South Africa's state-owned company, Transnet. And it just tells you that he himself, Malusi Gigaba, there is an element of a campaign to what he's doing, but there's an element of also trying to arouse South Africans to have that victim mentality that was there during the era of Jacob Zuma, that you are being persecuted, that state-owned investigative organs like the predecessor of IDAC the Scorpions, were seen as a political tool being used by the incumbent leadership against those who were their political protectors at the time, the likes of Jacob Zuma.
And let's draw back, because you're talking about the IDAC now. And when it comes to the IDAC particularly, we saw Julius Malema just yesterday, hinting at the head of IDAC and asking her if whether should we expect an arrest of some sort of a very high-profile politician. And what do we know now? It seems as if maybe to some people that Malema may had prior knowledge to what was going to take place today.
Is this the case that Julius Malema laid as the leader of the Economic Freedom Fighters a complaint against what is happening at Transnet? If it is, who in part of those investigators at IDAC whispered to him that a high-profile politician would be arrested? Because if you look at Advocate Johnson, she was a bit uncomfortable in those particular questions. She gave one-word or two-word answers and kept it very short. I remember at one point she even said, "You so eloquently put it," and she kept quiet after that. And it does tell you that there is a deeper issue when it comes to this particular matter. And it's no surprise that many within the political circles in the ANC will feel that this is a politically motivated case against Malusi Gigaba because of what transpired yesterday at the head of committee, and ultimately some political machinations and conspiracy theories that may be going on with the realms of the governing party. One source of mine in the NEC sent me a message that, quote, "If you guys are not careful, they are going to finish you all alive." End of quote. And that just tells you that already going to the ANC's National General Council on the 8th to the 12th of December, those political machinations of alignments and realignments, aligning with someone who may take over to guarantee your political future, is taking shape. And this so-called younger generation, led by the likes of Malusi Gigaba, Fikile Mbalula, is growing increasingly impatient with the old guard. But there is another view. Those who may have grown up with Malusi Gigaba may say he did all of these things willy-nilly, unnecessarily, and he killed his own future.
Another major story, we are running out of time, is the issue around the embattled police minister, and that's Minister Senzo Mchunu, who has been placed on special leave. At the same time, he released a statement today saying that he has handed over his electronic devices to the South African Police Service investigators. What does this mean for the Madlanga Commission?
How interestingly that the main politicians who are with law enforcement today come from the province of KwaZulu-Natal and come from two neighboring regions, Musadlala region and General Kizenga Mpanza. That is Richards Bay and that is Stenga. Malusi Gigaba, Mandeni Stenga, Senzo Mchunu, Richards Bay. That would ultimately be the Musadlala region. So it's going to be rather interesting on how Senzo Mchunu moves going forward. I've seen that he's roped in the former spokesperson of the CR17 campaign in KwaZulu-Natal, Senzo Mchunu. He is definitely fighting this particular issue. He has always maintained his innocence and that he has done nothing wrong and has always acted in an ethical way that is bestowed between members of the executive. It's going to be rather interesting on what goes on going forward. But interestingly, the IDAC head yesterday said that when they ultimately intervened, they found that a lot of data had been deleted from the phone of Vusmuzi Cat Matlala. Which data was deleted? Who was that data coming from? It also speaks to what General Shadrack Sibiya, who's allegedly in cahoots with criminals, said that they are taking devices in order to delete data. So there's a lot of conspiracy theories going around and flying around everywhere. Let's
quickly wrap up about KZN. And of course, looking back at the MK Party, we saw a major announcement coming out this week from former President Jacob Zuma saying that they have suspended the deputy, that is Dr. John Hlophe. What do you make of, this political wrangling? And it seems as if, the infighting in MK Party seems to not be going away.
What a shame. If you look at John Hlophe, he lost everything because of Jacob Zuma. Supported Jacob Zuma, allegations with Justice Jafta that system Nina Baba on that case related to former President Jacob Zuma. If he's not careful, the very same man he ultimately let go of everything for, who has effectively suspended him now, is going to go down to the political dustbin as having done nothing in the history of the MK Party and an ineffective opposition leader in Parliament. What a shame to a decorated judge in the history of South African politics. But ultimately, if you look at the political machinations within the MK Party, it does look like umkhonto kwazana ngaphakathi ekhaya. And it's going to be rather interesting on how they move forward within this particular issue. But sources have said that just Dr. Hlophe acted unilaterally without consulting any leaders within the party who were in the country. Tony Yengeni, the second deputy president, the national chair, the SG, the TG, consulted no one, acted unilaterally. And when they landed within the country, they ultimately saw these news and they then decided to remove the weekend special and make him a one-night stand.
All right, Samkele, clearly we can talk all day, you and I. Thank you so much for your time here on The Full View. That's SABC News Politics Reporter there, Samkele Maseko, giving us a wrap of what transpired this week, looking at the political landscape.